I think it's one of my sort of cornerstones that I beat my drum to, and every organization that I'm a part of, I think that when you try and innovate strictly in, like a segment like product development, it's like you're trying to make something work that doesn't intuitively work. And what I've found is that innovation really has to be a mindset, and you have to be innovating in everything that you do. From everything that we do, when we're doing our business projections and sort of planning our years, we always plan for one bad month. Don't worry about your balance sheets and your profit and loss and your cash flow statement. Make a simple chart week in, week out that allows you to, manage your cash flow and just look at what money do you expect to come in, what money do you expect to spend, who do you want to be, and what do you want to represent. And, so I often ask myself, questions about, how do we want to, eventually in my business, you always become the patient. And at some point in time, and how would you want to be treated?
Welcome to Leading to Profit. I'm your host, Kevin Bees, and I've dedicated my career to empowering business leaders like you with the leadership skills, performance psychology they need to build thriving businesses. Are you ready for immediately actionable strategies from world-class profit leaders? Let's dive in. This is Leading to Profit. Welcome to episode number 258 of Leading to Profit. Today we have Nick Schwarzrock. He is a serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in the medical tech, medical device, and telehealth. And his experience extends to over $2.4 billion of company mergers and acquisitions and layered integrations. So I'm so excited to welcome you to the show today, Nick. Welcome.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me. I'm really excited.
Hey, Nick, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that. I mean, it's a pretty headline grabbing number there, 2.4 billion in mergers and acquisitions. Tell us about your journey there. How did you come to a place where you're helping companies join together in that way?
Yeah, so kind of a little bit about my background. I think I was always meant to be, in the entrepreneurial space. I consider myself a serial entrepreneur. Started out in medical device and med tech, mostly because of my family members. My father went to medical school and then chose not to practice as a physician, which is very uncommon, and got into the business side of medicine. And my mother was a registered nurse, so working in the ICU in a hospital. So I had a strong background, I guess, from the family perspective in medicine. And my interests were always in the medicine from that family aspect, and then technology. And as I progressed through my career, I didn't anticipate it, but those two fields are really starting to merge in this med tech telehealth space. So really exciting there. But to get, kind of more pointed into your question, I started like a lot of people start with a big Fortune 500 company at Zimmer, which now is Zimmer Biomet, the largest orthopedic company in the world. Got some great experience there, and then moved off into other ventures. And my biggest merger acquisition that I was involved in was in this telehealth space, and it's kind of a culmination of my interests sort of merging in those two fields and having a great opportunity to work with very cutting edge, exciting product in a exploding market space. So, just hard work, dedication, luck is certainly a component of it, and just continuing to build and never being satisfied with good enough.
I love that. Sounds like a very clear driver there to keep improving. And now you mentioned about telehealth. Your current business is Advanced Recover. So I wonder if you could tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so Advanced Recovery, I founded the company with another individual in 2019, right before the pandemic hit. And I get two schools of thought. People tell me, wow, how'd you see that coming? And that must have been great. And then the others that, are maybe a little bit deeper in the entrepreneurial worlds thought, what a horrible time to start a business. And I think both of them had an aspect that were right. But what we're focused on is kind of this opioid epidemic, multimodal approach to care that minimizes the use of pharmacology, and then utilizing the huge leaps forward that we have in technology from a physical standpoint of everybody carrying these little computers around in their phone that we call a cell, or in their pocket that we call a cell phone. Price efficiencies that all those components have been driven because we're making, whatever, a billion of them every year, has really brought some technology down to pricing that we can really integrate into a number of medical devices. And then sort of at that same time, the dissemination of highly customizable software that used to be only available to Fortune 500 companies is now available to small entrepreneurial companies. And then this explosion of artificial intelligence, I hate using that buzzword, but large data models that can be used to identify, outliers that you want to try and catch. In this case, in our case, patients who look like they're going to have outcomes that are below the norm, and try and identify them and get them corrected with the aid of their providers before they start down a road of infection or some type of other poor outcome.
So how is it that with technology, you're helping these organizations or these individuals as well have like non-narcotic solutions?
So we're kind of taking a twofold approach. One is we're taking technology that's currently available in the marketplace that's sort of good, to steal from Jim Collins, and making them great. And then, so that's sort of like an evolutionary development where we just make something better. And then we're doing some work on the revolutionary side too, where we're bringing something brand new into the market that doesn't exist. And we're coupling that with our software, our large data models, and our high level of customer service, and sort of bridging gaps in the continuum of care. So think like you go see your orthopedic surgeon and you need a total knee, and then they do the surgery. You come back in the United States, you're probably seeing like an advanced practice provider. So like a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant for that follow-up meeting to see how you're doing. And then you're going on to physical therapy. And there really starts to be this big gap in communication between the person who did your surgery, their care team, and maybe their clinic or their hospital, and then wherever you are for the physical therapy. And when everything's going fine, that probably works great. But when outcomes aren't going the way they're supposed to and you're having issues, that breakdown in communication sometimes results in a lower quality of care, an outcome that everybody would have preferred was avoided, and significant increases in excess costs. And so we're really focused on how do we bridge that gap in continuum of care and make more efficient and cut out those extra costs that can be brought, like infection.
Yeah, great. That sounds awesome. Now, one thing I'm kind of picking up from here is like this sense of innovation. So I wonder if you could tell us about innovation as a philosophy instead of like strictly as part of product development.
I think it's one of my sort of cornerstones that I beat my drum to, and every organization that I'm a part of. I think that when you try and innovate strictly in, like a segment like product development, it's like you're trying to make something work that doesn't intuitively work. And what I've found is that innovation really has to be a mindset, and you have to be innovating in everything that you do. And that suits my entrepreneurial nature and the organizations that I'm involved with nowadays, which tend to be smaller, rapid growth, sub 100 million in revenue. And it just allows you to be more agile, more scrappy, more innovative. And we do that in everything. So not just product development, but how are we utilizing software? How are we utilizing artificial intelligence? How are we approaching the market? How do we take care of our patients? How do we take care of our employees? How do we interface with our employees? all of that stuff, we're innovating on everything. And we're kind of constantly in this cycle of good to great where, something might be great today. And if you don't innovate, it eventually, becomes good. But we're constantly refining those processes, constantly refining everything that we do and innovating in every aspect of the business to make sure that we're, excellent at everything that we do. So it's sort of this mindset of innovate everywhere, not just, in your product development or where you think you need to be innovative everywhere.
How, as a leader, do you keep that philosophy going beyond yourself into the whole team and the whole organization?
So I think it's challenging. And I think, like a lot of things in life, it requires a tremendous amount of discipline for yourself. And as a leader, I've found to be effective, everything's got to be bottom up and top down. So it can't just be you leading. It's got to be allowing everybody in your organization to sort of be beating the drum to that same tune, and allowing people to make mistakes and learn from them. And, my philosophy is mistakes are okay as long as we're not making the same ones over and over and over again. And so a lot of times when you're innovating very quickly or in a highly innovative environment, mistakes happen. You go down roads that you wish you wouldn't have. There are speed bumps, there are detours on the path. And that's one thing that you just have to accept and sort of build as part of the calculus, if you will. And so, like, from everything that we do when we're doing our business projections and sort of planning our years, we always plan for one bad month. I think that as simple as that sounds from a concept standpoint, I don't think people, when they're doing their annual planning, really take into account that everything's not going to go the way that they think. If you look at most people's planning, they're usually planning for roses all 12 months. And there's no, you end up seeing the deviation in the plan versus actual because you didn't plan for anything to go wrong. And we anticipate that things are going to go wrong in everything that we do. And it's just part of the learning process. It's part of the path.
That's great. And of course, you not only know that things are going to go wrong, but the important piece is when they do, you learn from them and you don't make the same mistakes over and over again. I think that's a really important piece that you pull out there. I wonder if you could also tell us a little bit more about, 'cause this isn't just the innovation side of things, creating the product. I can also sense that you're very good from a sales and selling perspective. How important is that for a leader of an organization?
Well, I'm fairly biased here. I came up through the sales channel, and if you asked my parents, I think they thought I was born a salesman. So, sales is that sales and marketing is really the engine of the business, right? It drives the revenues. I think that the important thing when you're a salesperson is to recognize, one, there's a flaw inherent in every salesperson in that we're the easiest person to be sold. Salespeople love to be sold. So when you're running an organization, it's important to keep that in mind. Whenever you're buying new software, buying new anything that's expensive, is to recognize that aspect. And I always like to try and balance with operational folks because they don't have that same flaw. They're more cautious and untrusting of us salespeople. So I think it's a good balance to bring in your operational team. But I think sales is important. But what I was sort of in my analogy was also pulling in is that strong balance in operations, I've found, is the key to success in modern business today. And I kind of lump operations and digital infrastructure, technology kind of into one bucket because I think that to have an effective operational team and operational part of your business, it needs to highly encompass technology, whether it be software, hardware, or some combination of both in today's world to be effective and to be efficient and to end up being successful. So I think you just have to balance your sales and marketing. You'll find that any good organization requires balance and then the discipline to keep it balanced. So I'd say that's kind of my view on sales.
Want to know exactly where your business is leaking profit? Take my free profit scorecard. It's a quick and simple tool that will help you identify hidden gaps and opportunities to maximize your bottom line in just a few minutes. Visit www.profit.gifts and get your personalized results today. Now, back to the show. Nick, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced over the years? Maybe there's a time that you've really been up against it, and what was that? What happened, and how do you overcome it?
I think from a entrepreneurial aspect, I think that it's almost universal that everyone struggles with capital and cash flow. And, kind of back to my other point that I am sort of beating like a dead horse, discipline. Both of the cash flow really requires discipline and some baseline skill sets. And what I've found is a lot of entrepreneurs sort of lack that finance and accounting sort of core skill set. And one of the things that I've done a lot of mentoring and some speaking and several podcasts. And one of the things I like to talk about is just you need to make your cash flow simple. Don't worry about your balance sheets and your profit and loss and your cash flow statement. Make a simple chart week in, week out that allows you to, manage your cash flow and just look at what money do you expect to come in, what money do you expect to spend. And if you keep that balance growing week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year, I can promise you'll be profitable. And once you break that $25 million in annualized revenue, then you can get more complex with, looking at your financial statements. Not saying that you don't need those financial statements for doing your taxes and whatnot, but sometimes stupid simple is the best way to go when you're trying to manage your cash flow and your limited capital, and make sure that when you make a bet with capital, that you're really, really sure that it's going to pay off, because that capital is very hard to come by.
Yeah, some really powerful points that you make there. And you're right, it can be quite common that entrepreneurs avoid the P&L, the balance sheet, and and the cash flow. And often they see that as the accountant's responsibility. But often, I guess, if we wait for the accountant's going to come back to you a year after the results are in, and they're only coming from a tax perspective as opposed to looking at the underlying performance. So I love this idea. Keep it simple. Make sure you can see and as you say, if you manage the cash flow very tightly, then it's highly likely profitability is going to follow. So I think that's a very important point. And the other thing I did want to ask you about as well is you seem to have a focus on customers and putting your customers right at the front of your core value. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so one of my mantras that I like to talk about is core values are only core values if you put them ahead of the revenue line. That's how you know it's a core value. And I work in the medical space, and so it's an interesting space because we have multiple customers in the United States. We've got the patient, we've got the provider or the prescriber, and you've got the insurance company, and then you also have the hospital system. Unfortunately, in the United States, the patient almost always ends up dead last in that arrangement, no matter who you're talking to. I guess I have, and our company and our team has made a decision to always put the patient first. And even when it behooves us not to, or it's not in our best interest to do so. And that's sort of that putting it ahead of the revenue line. And so we make decisions that oftentimes hurt our revenue or hurt our profitability, but are in the best interest of the patient. And, back to that kind of core value, that's our core value. And it has really distinguished us in the space that we're in. Unfortunately, I wish it was just the standard, but it's unfortunately not. And so it's really differentiated us, and we've seen tremendous word of mouth and sort of this business growth from referrals and people talking about us that isn't a result of our marketing or our sales efforts, but as our result of our core values and the way that we have decided to address the markets.
It's very powerful. And basically, by living by your core values, it may lose you some revenue or some profitability in the short term. But in the longer term, if your customers really appreciate what you're doing, then it's going to only help, because you have a business of integrity. People want to refer to you, want to work with you more.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened. And I'd love to tell you that that whole thing was on purpose and I saw that coming our way, but we just kind of looked at it as doing the right thing, and we're happy that it's benefiting us in the long term.
Tell us more about your values and your culture as an organization, and how, as a leader, did you define your values and what's important?
Well, I really try and make everything, super simple, and I end up thinking about things in the simplest terms possible. So, a lot of these values come from, kind of baseline, who do you want to be and what do you want to represent? And, so I often ask myself, questions about, you know, how do we want to, eventually in my business, you always become the patient. And at some point in time, and how would you want to be treated? And so I regularly, and our team regularly tries to put ourselves in, okay, if we were the patient in this situation, how would we want to be treated? And it makes for a level of clarity. And when you couple that with this innovative mindset and the fact that mistakes are okay, and we give all of our people a level of accountability where they can literally write a check for the company up to a certain dollar amount if they think it's going to make the customer have a better experience, drives this empowerment at all levels, where it's not the manual says this is the way that I'm supposed to do this, and my manager, I got to go ask for approval. It gives us empowerment to everybody that says, okay, here's the patient, here's our customer, how can we make it better? And I know that I've got autonomy to be able to make this decision my own without asking anybody else's approval. And it drives this whole sort of core value that we've set aside up and down the organization extremely effectively.
It sounds like a really core thing to the success of your business, the fact that you define those values and then you help make sure that the organization runs against them. It sounds like it could be at the heart of your success there. Now, I'd love to ask about the life-changing question. I know the core of the show came from the idea of life-changing questions. We say that smart leaders have great answers, but genius leaders have great questions. So what's one question you've asked that's had the biggest positive impact on your life or the success of the organizations you work with?
The one that I already talked about was, if you were the patient, how would you want to be treated? The other one that I asked myself, and I'm a very proud father, is I routinely ask myself, what would my daughter think of me and this decision that I'm trying to make? And, it's really a grounding of, morality and ethics about how do you want to behave? How do you want to live your life? And, how do you want to be viewed by the people closest around you? And, how would somebody view, how would my daughter view me in this aspect? And I think it keeps you grounded. I think it keeps you humble. And I think it keeps you well anchored to those values, because I know me as a proud parent, the last thing I would want to do is have my daughter look at me in, a way that was negative, or that she couldn't be proud of something I did or a decision that I made. So again, back to simplicity, it's something that keeps me well anchored to, my morals and values and ethics that I try and live my life by.
Two very powerful questions there. So if you were the patient or the customer, how would you want to be treated? And I think in your case, that's even more important, because if you were the patient, you would really want the utmost care for your health. So I think it adds an extra layer of emotion to that when you think of yourself as being a patient in that situation. And I love seeing your decisions through the lens of someone else important to you, whether it's a daughter, a wife, a husband. But I think the daughter one's really powerful, because I guess as a dad, you just want to do the best for your daughter or the best for your son, best for the children that you have. It would certainly make some decisions a lot quicker and a lot easier. If you have an idea about something, you think, as you know, the daughter wouldn't really appreciate that. Hey, Nick, you've shared so much value and so much wisdom. If anyone listening wanted to be in contact with you or follow up with anything you shared, where would be the best place for them to contact you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Nick Schwarzrock on LinkedIn. You can also find me at advancedrecover.com and then social media under the hashtag advanced recover.
Amazing. Wherever you're listening, click into the show notes there. There's a clickable link back to all of those locations and a few more. I think we've got a few other places where you can find Nick as well. So you'll be able to click through there. Nick, did you have any final ideas or insights you want to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, you had asked me before about any books that I've read that you think are or that I
Mm,
think are meaningful, and I couldn't pick just one, so I picked three. One is Dreamland, the true story of the opioid epidemic in America. It's for people that maybe just read the news articles. It's an in-depth look at this huge issue that continues to ravage the United States. And then the 4 Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss. And I sort of read that book through a different lens of how to be more efficient in your day rather than how do you work 4 hours in a day. If you can figure out how to work 4 hours in a day, hey, congratulations to you. But I find it an interesting look at how to be more efficient. And then the Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson. I've read that twice, and I just find Elon to be entrepreneur, a risk taker, and a visionary of our modern day that just continues to astound me with the work that he continues to do.
Yeah, he's pretty impressive, and I did love that book. The Walter Isaacson does a really great job there, and it's interesting to get an insight into the guy. You consider the level of risks that he's taken to now I don't know how many billion-dollar businesses he has now, three I think, maybe four, I'm not sure. So and
I
maybe
think
more on the
more.
way.
Yeah.
Four. It's quite impressive. I mean, when you think about the odds, the idea of being able to create a company that takes people to space that's potentially going to get to Mars, the idea of that a decade or two would be like that's crazy. Not even NASA, not even the government can do that. And here he is, right on the precipice of being able to do that. It's quite remarkable. I think what I love from that book was almost a sense of dedication to mission. He's very clear on what he wants to do, and actually nothing's going to get in the way of that. And so either you kind of with him and help him with that, or just like get out of the way.
Uncompromising. Yeah.
Uncompromising. Yeah, very fascinating. I love what I also loved about that. I mean, his mission can be summarized in two words. You're talking about core values and things, but I guess sometimes your core values come from your mission. His mission is to occupy Mars. You can summarize your whole mission in two words. Everything you do in life is driven towards that. And of course that's spooled different businesses and different opportunities. Now his boring company, building tunnels. I guess he knows when he gets to Mars, he's going to need to be able to do that. Of course, now he's created a company that does that here on Earth. And so I'd imagine the solar panel business is going to be solar panels are going to be very important when he gets to Mars as well. And no doubt the vehicles, being able to drive around, in the way that they are as well. So yeah, I love that book. I've not read in a very long time. I think I must have read that book a decade and a half ago. And I think you're right to look at it through that lens. Because if you really love what you do, you don't really want to be doing a 4 hour work week anyway. You want to keep doing what you're doing. But if you can be more efficient and more effective at it and you reach more people, amazing. So yeah, three really great book recommendations there. So Nick, I'm so appreciative of the time that you shared today and the great wisdom and the great insight. And wherever you're listening, make sure you click in the show notes and go and check out advancedrecover.com. And I'm sure Nick would love to be connected with you and hear from you. So Nick, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you to your listeners. I'm really grateful to have had an opportunity to do this show.
Amazing. And wherever you are, make sure you're asking yourself that question then. If you were the customer, how would you want to be treated? And core values are only core values if you put them ahead of the revenue line. So what are your core values? Make sure you're clear on those and act in accordance with those. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode. thank you for tuning in to Leading to Profit. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps us to reach more leaders like you who are committed to maximizing their positive impact and profitability. Until next time, this is Kevin Bees, and remember, you stop leaking profit when you're engaged in leading to profit.